Welcome to BISTRO Buzz Conversations with Sutapa Basu, hosted on my Facebook page, author Sutapa Basu. BISTRO Buzz is all about buzzing. So every day of the week is going to be dedicated to a certain idea. They could be about culture, they could be about the arts, they could be about books, could be about poetry, could be about entertainment, or just random reflections. And how it's going to work is that we are going to have a talk show where we will be hosting a number of guests, very interesting people who will be talking to us about their experiences, give us a lot of food for thought and reflection. And there are also going to be posts, there are going to be prompts, which will invite you to debate, there are going to be videos. So every evening, the table at Bistro Buzz is going to be heaped, and you are welcome to walk in, to taste it, to speak about it, to listen to it, to argue about it, or just to enjoy it. So keep a slot every evening and come and visit Bistro Buzz. So today, we are going to be launching Bistro Buzz on this online launch, and I warmly welcome all of you there who have joined us for this launch. We are very privileged to have with us Vinita Nangia. We all know that she is the executive editor at the Times of India. She is the director, Times Literature Festivals, and she's the director and founder of Write India, the world's largest crowdsourcing writing contest. But what we don't know about her is her philanthropic support of all aspiring writers and poets. So many of the authors out there have found their feet because of her encouragement and her support. It's only the people who have benefited from that benevolence who know about it, because she has decided to keep it under a veil of humility and only do what her heart tells her to do. As for me, she has been my mentor ever since I stepped on this journey of writing. She has launched each one of my books, and if they have bloomed, it's only because of her blessings. That's what I believe. And today, despite her very, very hectic schedule, she's here for the launch of Bistro Buzz. And if Bistro Buzz, I'm very sure if it finds a place in your hearts, it's only because Vinita has touched it. Thank you so much, Vinita, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Sutapa, for that over-generous introduction, really. And
every word is meant.
Bouts of modesty. If Bistro Buzz, congratulations on the launch, and I'm sure it'll do amazingly well. And if it does well, it's all due to your hard work and everything that you put into it, as you do with so many other things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now may I invite you to declare Bistro Buzz open?
Yes, with a lot of love and best wishes, I declare Bistro Buzz open. And I hope you have a wonderful innings with it, just as you did with Write India, just as you do as an author with your wonderful books. Wish you all the best, Sutapa.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Vinita. And now let's get on to the event that we have been so eagerly waiting for, the live discussion with Vinita about the curious case of Quietude. So Vinita, let me ask you one thing. These are the times of crisis, right? And this is when dialogues should evolve, when people should come together, when they should speak in one voice. Now that the pandemic is raging across the world, are people really doing that? Are they really speaking in one voice? Whom should we listen to?
Yeah, Sutapa, as you rightly say, when it's a time of crisis, people of character always come together, and they come together under one umbrella and raise one voice and become the leaders for the rest of the populace. But today I feel with the numerous voices, and I think a lot of it to do with social media, really, where every Tom, Dick, and Harry not only finds a voice but finds an amazing platform for a lot of people to follow him or her. And as we all know, good news is no news, and bad news is what always makes news. So you raise a lot of a lot of noise over something, you bring up something negative, you pull down things, and you have 1,000 followers coming after you and repeating what you've said. There are a lot more naysayers out there than people who encourage others and who say positive things, despite so many people telling us all the time, be positive, stay positive. But still, there's something within us which attracts us more to the negative and to repeat the negative rather than the positive things. And sadly, in this entire course of the pandemic, instead of seeing that evolution of the sensible, steady voices, one has seen a kind of a devolution. And it is all played out on social media. It is, we are living our lives through technology nowadays. Everything that we do, even right now, it's through technology that we are meeting. And it's so unusual because I'm so used to sitting next to you and talking to you. And now I'm talking to you on a screen, really. So it's sad, but there have been, I will not say there have been no sensible voices. Of course, there are sensible voices. There are people who are dedicated to working towards a positive future and a positive resolution of the pandemic. But all those voices kind of get lost in the mayhem and the chaos that we surround ourselves with. Having said that, I feel that it is up to us. It is our choice. The voices that we choose to hear. There'll be all kinds of voices around us all the time. There'll be all kinds of people giving you free advice, whether you want it or not. There'll be people who'll be telling you, directing you what to do. But the choice is always ours. And we can choose the voices we want to hear, the voices we want to follow, the people that we want to listen to, and the directions that we want to lead us. So if we choose judiciously and we apply our own minds and we delve deep inside and figure out what is right or wrong, I believe our instinct and our intellect always leads us to the right voices.
Very true. So we should use our judgment and our, judiciously listen to the voices which really mean well.
Yes.
Now, in one of your evocative ozone features, you have stated that the rules of engagement have evolved over centuries of civilization. Could you please throw a little light on what you mean by that?
I don't know which column you've dug it out of, but and the context that it was used in. But I would say that what I possibly meant by that was that, we all communicate in our different manners. And communities and families and societies over the years evolve a certain style of communication, of talking to each other, understanding each other, which is possibly very different from the style of communication that another community or another society may have developed.
Absolutely.
So over the years, we learn how to communicate most effectively with each other. And not just over the years and centuries, even if you look at your own life, I look at my life, the way we communicated, first we learned how to communicate by communicating with our parents when we took our first steps and spoke our first words. So showing anger, showing happiness, showing grief is something that we all pick up from people around us, from our parents first, and then from our peers. And as we grow up, we realize the words that we speak which upset another person, the words that we speak which thrill another person. And then we choose to use those words effectively. And that is how communication develops for an individual, and that is how it develops for a community, and over the generations for a civilization. If we come back to the topic of our discussion today, silence, quietude, look at it's interesting how differently the West looks at silence from the way we look at it in Asia, for instance. So in India, we are brought up to use silence as a tool of respect. So if your parents upbraid you, they are unhappy with you, they are upset with you, you hang your head down and you listen in silence. You speak up and you're gone. So you realize that silence at that point is a tool.
Right thing.
You're being respectful. So
yes.
Similarly, in other countries, in Japan as well, that's how it is. But if you look at the West, it's completely different. They look at silence as disrespect. They are very talkative. They like people to talk. So there was a survey done quite some time back on this, and in the West, in America, it was in England. In England, 40% people said that communication is best through talking, and in Japan, 43% people said communication is best through silence. So that's the kind of difference, in the way we look at anything, in the way we communicate.
True. So very true. You've given such a wonderful example, in fact. Now let's come to social media that we were talking about just now, technology. So one of the dangers of being on social media is to be trolled. And, it's with by anybody who doesn't agree with whatever you're saying. And it's really harrowing to be hounded by trolls. So what should we do? Should we just keep silent on things that we feel strongly about?
To keep absolutely silent over something that you feel strongly about, I think would be abdicating responsibility. Because though there can be a silence that speaks a lot, there can also be a silence that, ignores and totally abdicates responsibility and shows you up as an irresponsible person. So I would say that social media, which is full of trolls, is not necessarily the only place to speak up. I believe each one of us should do our bit. And I really respect and hold in high esteem the people, the celebrities who are, still speaking up in social media despite being trolled viciously. And there are a lot of women. Yes, a lot of women journalists, my colleagues, who are out there and taking on these trolls on a daily basis. And I've seen that what they do normally is they just ignore it. They ignore it or they report it. Unfortunately, there's nothing much that you can do beyond that, except now, of course, the government seems to be taking it seriously. And there is talk about, actually booking the trolls and picking them up from there and punishing them. So, but I don't think silence is an answer to, when you feel strongly about something, you can't just stay silent about it. Okay, you can silently protest. You can have other ways of protesting, but not necessarily just totally ignore it.
So when you say that we shouldn't ignore it, it's good to speak out against injustice. But is it possible that we may speak too much sometimes?
Yeah, like I often say, the problem is that we don't use the. It's not very often with what you say. Quite often the problem is with the way you say it, with the way you say something. Sometimes the problem is with saying far too much when just a single sentence would have done. So it is the hyperbole which creates problems, which creates issues by saying too much on something. And I've learned that the hard way. I realized that sometimes, when I'm upset about something, I protest and I protest too vehemently. And after some time, I realized that the first sentence was enough and I need not have spoken the second or the third sentence. And it's the second or the third sentence which really got me into trouble. So you think that when the other person is not responding, maybe they haven't understood or they are not, agreeing with you. But sometimes they just choose to keep quiet and, they may believe what you're saying, but they don't want to say, yes, oh, yes, you're right and I'm wrong. So I do believe that today, even on social media and everywhere else, really, it's the hyperbole, the over-speaking that becomes a problem. I mean, take the example of Kangana Ranaut and even, Jaya Bachchan recently. So when Kangana Ranaut, I really admire her for standing up and, fighting for justice at a time when nobody else was really giving her that kind of support. But Nietzsche have taken it to such an extent as to have made it a personal vendetta. Nietzsche have tried to bring an entire Bollywood industry down. So that went a little overboard. And coming to Jaya Bachchan, she also said the right thing. And I wrote this in my column, Ozone. She said the right thing. She said the right thing when she said that you can't paint the entire industry black just because of a few people. That was right. But if she'd only stopped there, after that, she said, "Jis thali mein khate hain, usme chhed karte hain." So that was going overboard. That is what I say, speaking beyond what you should say. And that is what all the trolls caught onto. And that is what all her critics got onto. They didn't say what she said was wrong. But this sentence, this is what they got onto. So we can save ourselves by just being pithy to the point, saying what we have to and not going overboard.
Absolutely true. And you're right about Jai Bachchan. It was just that sentence of hers which, brought in all the
All the
blasting that
trauma.
she got. Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, the other side, like Leonardo da Vinci says that nothing strengthens authority so much as silence. So, do
Yeah.
you believe being silent gives us inner strength?
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi also believed that once a week, one day in the week, he would be silent and he would only communicate through, writing notes and giving to people. But I mean, I would say silence should be silence. Even writing notes is not really silence because you're still communicating.
Hmm.
I know it's very, very difficult to go into that kind of a silence. But look at it this way, like, from the moment we get up in the morning to whatever the chaos we surround ourselves with all through the day, all the activities we do, and by the end of the day you're so tired that you're already half asleep by the time you hit the bed. In between all this, where do we find any time for ourselves? We say, okay, I need time, we all have to make me time, but where is that me time? It's not there. So I mean, if you were to challenge yourself and tell yourself that, okay, just be quiet, absolutely quiet for a few minutes, close your eyes, don't think of anything, just go deep inside. After some time, the noise around you, stops, not because the noise has stopped, but because you've stopped listening to it. Your tension and your stress go away, not because they've gone away, but because you've stopped reacting to them. And all the negativities, everything of the day just fall off because you have just lifted yourself and you've changed your perspective. Things around you are the same, the tension is the same, the stress, the things that cause the stresses are the same, but you don't feel tense about it. Only thing you've done is you've changed your perspective. So from the outside you've gone inside. So from focusing on what brings you all that stress and what gives you all that tension, you're now focusing on the inner peace, the calm, and you're focusing on what really matters. Shudapa, another thing I do very often when something gives me a lot of stress, I like to do this little exercise with myself. I put it in context of, that little incident. I put it in context of my entire day, of the entire week, the entire month, the entire year, and then my entire life. And it means nothing. That one incident, which is like, totally destroying my peace of mind, my calm state, and giving me, heart attacks. Suddenly it means nothing because you've placed it in a much larger context. So these are the little things I do, and they are always only done in silence. They cannot be done with chaos around. You cannot cancel outside noise. You can't go outside and cancel the noise that is there, but you can cancel it by not letting it impact you. That is silence.
What a wonderful tip you've given us. So I think all of us should do this, reserve a certain time in the day when we can just be totally silent and get into ourselves. And
Yeah.
that is what is going to make us stronger. Very
Yeah.
true. Now, having said that, can you give us a few tips on how we can be verbally responsible? So when we are speaking, how can we speak responsibly?
See, when you say that people should not speak too much and they should remain silent, one very important thing to point out there is that it's silence. We are not talking about the silence of a dumb person. We are not talking of an unintelligent silence. There is a high quotient of emotional intelligence involved in that kind of a silence. The same silence um, could convey a lot of love, your love for another person. The same silence could convey anger for someone. The same silence could convey utter contempt for someone, or it could convey a deep interest in whatever they are saying. And it's just the quality of the silence. There's something, nothing happens, you don't say anything, but there's something in the air that just shifts. And you realize that something has changed. I'll give you the example of a senior colleague of mine, very, very senior colleague, and I'm not going to name him. But he has this quality of, he changes the quality of his silence when you're sitting with him in a meeting. And I've seen this happen to a lot of my colleagues when they're sitting with him, and it's happened to me as well. So you're sitting with him and you're saying something, and he's silently just looking at you and nodding his head, or not even nodding his head. And then suddenly the quality of the silence changes and there's a bristling quality in the air, and you realize you've said something that possibly irritates him. So you try to, change that. And then after some time, you realize, oh God, I'm boring him. After some time, you realize, oh, he's listening so intently, and you start speaking even more, and you start blabbering, and you say the kind of things that you came into the room thinking, I will never say this to him, but you've said it. So what is he doing? He's manipulating you with his silence. And a lot of interviewers do that as well. Lots of interviewers do that. They manipulate you with silence. They'll keep quiet, and people should be very careful not to jump in, and say things that they meant never to say. In that, so that's a clever manipulation of, clever use of silence. So coming back to your question of, you asked that how can we, sorry, could you just repeat your question?
So what you just said is that while silence can be eloquent, silence can also be very dangerous. So we have to be careful as well when somebody is, there's a long silence that is coming from somebody. We have to gauge what is the silence all about.
Yes.
Very true. But what my question was basically, can you give us some tips on how we can be verbally responsible? How do we think before we speak?
Yeah.
Very important thing, I think.
Yeah. So coming back to this, what I just said about silence. Now, if we train ourselves, if we are emotionally intelligent enough and we train ourselves to understand what are the moments at which you need to speak, and when have you spoken more than you should, or when are you speaking less than you should. All these things come from a high state of emotional intelligence and a sensitivity. So when you're looking at the other person, or you're looking at a situation, or you're speaking from a platform, you just have to strike the right note. You can't go overboard, and you can't say less than what is meant to be said. So I guess a lot of deep information, deep thinking about what you're going to be saying, and learning, experience teaches you. Learning by observing other people and their reactions and their responses. That's a very important part of, knowing what is the right thing to say to the right person. There could be 5 different people that you're communicating with, and even if you have to communicate the same thing to them, you need to have 5 different ways of communicating it to them, because each one of them will, react and respond differently to whatever you're saying, and not just what you're saying, but possibly the tone that you're using, the facial expressions you use, the body language you use. Sometimes you may give out a laugh and the other person will say, "What are you laughing at? What's funny?" And yet another person may understand instinctively what you're laughing at and start laughing with you. So you could hurt somebody with the same laughter, and you could make somebody else very happy with the same laughter at the same moment. So I guess it's a more intuitive understanding of people, situations, and the topic that you're talking about, and the context in which you're talking about.
Very true. So, something like just a simple thing like "come here," you will say it in a different tone to a child. You will say it in a different tone to an elderly person. You'll probably say it in a different way to a friend, and you will say it in a different way to a dog, right?
Yes.
So completely different tones you have to use to just say the same 2 words. And yes, body language is, of course, very, very important. So basically what I understand is that when we are talking to people, or when people are silent, we have to constantly observe. We have to see how that person is reacting, and then intuitively, sort of either take the opportunity or back out of the situation. So that is what I think, that is something that most, what should I say, people who are selling use it a lot, because they have to constantly, be intuitive about their customers' reaction to whatever they're saying or whatever they're pitching, and accordingly then, manipulate the customer.
They change their tone.
Yeah. So that is...
And very important what you said, that you cannot go silent when you are really, when you feel strongly about something. And there is a time to speak up, when we all have to speak up, when we all have to protest. And not everybody will do it in the same way. Not everybody will go out and, go out on a protest march. Not everybody will go out and light candles. Not everybody will lay themselves out on social media for trolls to come and, attack you and abuse you. But everybody has their own ways of doing something. And so long as we step up and we do our little thing, we need not be embarrassed about not saying it on social media, not going on a protest march. So long as you know that you, with sincerity and with intelligence, you have done your bit, I think that's enough. Each one of us just needs to do our bit. That's important.
Very true. And be responsible for what we're doing. In fact, sometimes stand up for it. Supposing you are saying something which is probably contrary to what everybody else is saying, you should have the argument ready for it and stand up for it. It's not that you back down just because people are, trolling you about it. So that is also important.
Yes. And that I think can happen if you truly explore yourself. And again, these meditative silences help in that, in understanding your basic values. So long as you understand your basic values, you just can't go wrong, because then, there is that line that you've drawn. And incidentally, that's the column I've written for this coming Sunday, how to draw that line and know that beyond this line, I will not go, come what may, because this line is drawn on the basis of my deep values, of the values that I uphold in life, and there's no way that I'll cross those.
Very true. And that is something that I think is what forms what we call character.
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
You should have your values should be there with you, and you should draw a line and not cross it, whatever may happen. So that
Then
is
you
what
know,
I
then
think
you know
every
what,
strong.
because you will know what you want to protest against, you'll know what you want to stand up for, and what it is that you want to just stay silent on. It all comes from within you. It all comes from your set of values.
So we can end up by saying that quietude is actually inside you. Don't seek it outside. Look for
Yes.
it inside, and you will find it. Just
Yeah.
search for it and seek it, intently and with sincerity, and it's all there. It's just for you, waiting for you to, be discovered by you. So thank you so much, Vinita. This was a
Thank you very much.
fascinating discussion. This was
Thank you.
really a fascinating discussion. And I can see all the comments. Everybody is thinking about what you're saying. There have been so many comments about the tips that you've given, and I think people are going to follow them. And basically, it was very, very fascinating. And we are all going to reflect on this. Every time we
Thank
think
you.
about shooting our mouth, we will think of the words that you have said. Thank you
I
so much,
love
Vinita.
talking to you, Sutapa. It's been my spot of sunshine in the day, really. Cooped up as we are at home in the pandemic. It's wonderful
You
to
have
talk to you.
you have
Thank you.
actually given the sunshine to everybody else as well.
Wish you all the best for Bistro Bars, and I hope you do amazingly well. And I hope to come back here again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Definitely we'll have you back. If you can give us time, nothing like it. It'll be lovely. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. And thank you everybody for being with us all throughout this discussion. And Bistro Buzz is going to come back with lots and lots more interesting chat shows and talk shows with interesting people. So please do visit Bistro Buzz whenever you can, every evening. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.